Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am thrilled to present two guys who are longtime friends, one of whom I've known well as a good friend and have pursued as a speaker for quite some time. The other is a new friend and someone who will blow you away simply by understanding who he knows and who knows him. Both are successful music entrepreneurs and the perfect example of what I strive to present in every episode. Really smart people doing cool work. I promise you will leave today smarter and more enlightened than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. The second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I'm a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this free. Special thanks to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, Project Music, Better Than Booze, and MedJet. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome Mitch Schneider. In the mid to late 70s, Bronx, New York-born Mitch Schneider was a freelance journalist for Rolling Stone, Crawdaddy, Circus, Good Times, LA Weekly, and BAM, plus Rolling Stone Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll. He moved to LA in 1979 and became a music publicist at Solters, Roskin, Friedman, PR. And in the ensuing 4+ decades and through a few different iterations of his own firm, Mitch has become one of the most connected and respected publicists in the entire industry. His company is called Schneider Rondon Organization, or SRO, to reflect the new partnership with Marcy Rondon. With offices in LA, Nashville, Las Vegas, Phoenix, SRO handles music, culture, and lifestyle projects with an artist roster encompassing the genres of rock, country, Americana, and pop. It has been hailed as a bona fide tastemaker by LA Weekly and by Music Connection as one of the world's premier public relations firms. The roster is eclectic and encompassing. It includes various styles and genres, superstars, musical legends, festivals, award shows, and emerging artists. That diversity enables MSO to obtain coverage in multiple outlets and mediums from underground to mainstream. Mitch, it is such an honor to have you join us today. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you. And that's quite a lead-in, so that's highly appreciated.
All true.
Thank you.
Joining Mitch as today's featured guest is my old pal, Scott Welch. Scott is president of Scott Welch Management, where he oversees the careers of various talented artists and provides consulting services to multiple music technology companies. He offers his expertise to influential companies such as Soundstripe, Single Music, Eva, Gigs, and A to Z Sports. He also manages fantasy recordings artist, The Criticals. Scott is an integral part of a team responsible for building the highly anticipated Game of Thrones attraction in Las Vegas. He's also involved in the development of another exciting venture called Xperia, soon to open in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Previously, he managed the careers and development of numerous multi-platinum recording artists, icons such as Alanis Morissette, Leanne Rimes, Steve Perry, Paula Abdul, Collective Soul, and CC Music Factory all flourished under his guidance. Scott played a pivotal role in the pioneering days of digital music with his involvement in MP3.com, which raised over $370 million, making it the largest technology IPO at that time. His forward-thinking approach also led him to invest in and advise the development of StubHub, the first online secondary ticketing company. StubHub's success ultimately culminated in its acquisition by eBay for $310 million. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars back to our platform. Take it away, boys.
Oh, I don't know, Mitch, how we follow that introduction. I feel I don't
Yeah,
know if we can go
well,
through there.
that's a lot. Well, I think a really great place to start is when we first started working together. Trudy Green had hired me because I was working with her on Heart, Whitesnake, and other acts. And then she hired me for the Jefferson Airplane reunion album, which was 1989.
Yeah, I think
Which
we should probably let the audience who doesn't know Trudy Green. I had been a tour manager and I had never met someone like Trudy Green. She was about 5'5", could cuss better than any sailor I'd ever talked to, and was a piece of work.
she was amazing. She was very inspirational for me, in that she really showed me like how you have to push harder and harder and harder. And I think as a woman, and I also work with Sharon Osbourne
Yeah,
still, there is that, women, a lot of men try to reduce women to the level of second class citizens, and they
yeah,
have to push harder. So that's just something that exists in the business. I just saw her. When I first met her, and it's good to talk about this because I think it shows everybody what it takes. She was interviewing me to see if I would handle Heart and if I would earn that position, of course. And
right.
I remember she said, "Oh, just sit here. I'm a little bit backed up." She called, Heart had come back really big with their 1987 album, and they were following it up with Bad Animals. She called the international people and said that Heart is coming over to do interviews because she wanted to break them finally internationally. And the
Right.
person said, "I don't know if we can pull together interviews by this time," and so on. She said, "You will make it happen. It's
Yeah.
just the way it is." And she
Yeah.
was just, and she speaks with that ferocity. And yes, Hart did break internationally on that next record. So it takes that level of intensity. I think it's great to be nice, but you have to be intense. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think intense translates as rude, mean, and cavalier.
Yeah.
So
I learned a bunch of new swear words I did not know. And she had a knack for being able to string 4 or 5 of them together so eloquently.
It really
Yeah.
amazing. So now after Jefferson Airplane, the next project I believe we get united on is Paula Abdul.
Right. That's right.
As
I
you had
forgot.
moved to, that's right,
Yeah.
as you moved to another company,
Yeah.
and I think the reason Scott and I get on so well is that I respect him as a manager. He respects me as a publicist, and we all know the fountain is the artist and listening to them and giving them realities. I'll tell you a great story about Alanis Morissette. And I remember Scott had me on the phone with her, and she had sold out. This is, Jagged Little Pill was Godhead. It was huge. She had a headline run at the Greek Theater. It was sold out. We had a conversation with her about the importance of still doing interviews, even though you're sold out. And we explained to her that the media has been really fantastic with you. We should keep doing interviews. And because these very media people are going to be putting together lists at the end of the year, best albums, best
Yeah.
videos. So Scott always respected me enough to get me on the phone with the artist and to speak directly. Because in PR, you don't always speak directly to the artist. A manager, a lot of times, at least back then, when it was before the internet, now we're connected to the artist like 24 hours for better or worse. But that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Um, but Scott gave me the platform to have that access to the artist and really explain. And we explained it. And I think even on that call, there was a very honest discussion saying careers will move in peaks and valleys. And these media writers, they have the ability to stand by you when you may go into the valley part of your career.
Yeah.
And she was very cool and understanding about that. And she didn't hang up and say something like "piss off, I'm a star." She
Yeah.
listened good. I
Yeah.
I
I
always
mean,
had
you
great
remember
respect
the
for her.
conversation we had with her on Grammy night. She was adamant about if she goes, if I'm lucky and fortunate enough to win, there's not going to be pictures of me holding Grammys. I don't believe in them. I believe that everyone on this show has validated. And I remember the record label was on me to look, make sure if she wins, she's going to show up for photographs. And we were able to manage that situation because there is not a pictures exist of her holding 7 Grammys. She won that night.
Yeah, the only picture you will see of Alanis holding the trophy is when she accepted it on screen, and that
Yeah.
photo's out there. Alanis's whole thing was, and she told us, I don't believe that that as an artist that it should be a competition because all the artists are great. So I was backstage with her and Scott, and she knew what we were going to do. So I had everybody, including my old friend Maureen O'Connor from Rogers and Cowan, who was the PR for the Grammys, plus the Naris people, plus photographers screaming at
And from
us.
the network, CBS
Yes.
everybody was screaming at us.
And they wanted her hold, that picture of her with her 4 Grammys and I just said that thank you everybody for coming. We'd like to do the photo this way.
Yeah.
And it was really great. And it really proves something. If you're going to carry out something, don't change course in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Stick with what the plan is. Because it
Yeah.
was easy. Because people were screaming at us. They thought we were like aliens from another planet.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? That's a good example of what the artist wanted and what the artist was comfortable with. And look, I wasn't really happy about it, and the label wasn't happy about it. But I think in the long term, she was right about it.
Yeah, because I think, when she was talking about it, I remember there's that picture of Christopher Cross that year that he won all the
Yeah.
Grammys, and there's that photo of him holding 7 Grammys. Now, it's a beautiful celebratory photo. However, it comes back to haunt you because nobody could achieve that
Ever again.
watermark again. So you're
Yeah.
always held against an impossible standard, even if you're creating great music.
Yeah.
So I thought, so Alanis was really cool about it, and we worked together as a team to make that happen. And that's really a good behind the scenes look at what a manager and a publicist and an artist, how they will collaborate to execute the vision of the artist. Yeah, it would have been easier to have her stand there with, holding all the Grammys, but we sort of changed the narrative, as they say.
For me, every artist career is based by just putting bricks in the wall. You have to continually decide which bricks go, where they go, and the fact that she let us control some of that, I thought was really good. And she was a true partner with us in these calls and decisions. She was smart. She knew what was important to her. And there are times when we all disagreed, but it was her call. And there are times when she didn't want to do it, but she would listen to us and do it. So I think that taught me a lot about management.
Yeah, and it's also bears mentioning that, during this time of 95, there was not the technology that there is now. So a
Yeah.
lot of it was getting the artists on the phone. I believe it predates general texting. There were computers, but I don't think we were really even hooked up officially to the internet until middle 95,
Yeah.
96.
Yeah.
Because I remember we used to, send out press releases by fax. And I mean, I've been around the rodeo so long. I remember in 1979 working at Soldiers Rusk and Friedman, where we had to wait for the New York office to send us a telex of a New York Post story. And by the time the telex came in, it took 30 minutes to transmit, and then it would arrive all smudged and you couldn't even read it.
Yeah.
And but it's like you worked with it because that was your reality at that particular time.
Yeah, I think the thing that helped me most as a manager was being a tour manager, because again, you couldn't text people, you couldn't email people, everything was done by the phone. I went to work I was really fortunate. I got to work for a really good management company. I won't say their names right now, but I remember when I got hired, the manager said to me, look, there are two rules we have for our tour managers. One, always get the money, because in those days, you never put the band on stage till you got paid. And the second was, don't call us unless somebody dies. And so
Yes.
that was the two things I learned early on. You had to just figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I took a heavy metal band, a big one, down to South America, and literally I had to pay the guy who was stamping the passports for us to get out of the country. I mean, you just had to think on your feet and figure out how to get it done, because you couldn't miss a show. You just
No.
had to make it.
And I see that somebody just texted a gentleman named Charles about pagers. Yes,
Yeah,
pagers do predate, obviously, the Blackberries and all of that.
I miss my
And
BlackBerry. I just saw the Netflix story about the history of BlackBerry.
yeah,
That was the game changer for me, was a BlackBerry.
yeah, it was easier to type on it, I find, than an
Yeah,
iPhone. But an iPhone obviously has endless, amazing features.
yeah, yeah.
So we did this all without technology. And something interesting, I was thinking this morning, we put a press release out. We handle Ozzy Osbourne, we handle Billy Morrison, and they
I read it.
released
I read
and
it.
they put out a new single and video, Crack Cocaine. Back in the day, I used to get people excited about our press releases. When we mailed them, I would pick fluorescent colors
Yeah, I remember those.
to send out. And because, the whole thing in PR or marketing, no matter where you are, it's how do you make your product stand out amidst all the noise that's out there? So we used to pick for every client different colors. And sometimes we would, on a Friday, put 8 press releases in one package. And it would be like a rainbow of colors. And to this day, people will say, "Oh, Mitch, we still have some of those. We use them as scratch paper. Sometimes we save them." And I just smile. Now, of course, when you send it out, a press release, um, good luck, because some of my journalist friends will say, "Mitch, we could get 100 press releases a day, and then on Fridays when everybody's putting out singles and the links are all active, that journalists say they can get 200 a day plus." And so what we have to do in this business to stand out is if it's an important press release, we'll sometimes send an embargoed copy of it to the media so they could prepare their story before the press release is released.
Yeah,
And then we also do follow-ups the next day, and we try to put our press releases out early in the week. We tell our clients, release your video on a Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll put the press release out on that Wednesday. We'll follow up with the media on Thursday and remind them, oh yeah, the video's out, but the single is out tomorrow. So they could be ahead of the story as well. So that's something that this all is very time consumptive. And and I'm going to say this because I'm a very honest, transparent person, that I believe what publicists do, and I don't doubt marketing managers, whatever. It's not the same amount of money that we used to make. The time consumption of trying to make your artist stand out is great. There are more personalized pitches than ever. There's more follow-up. There's just more of that. And that's what it takes to really run the show.
yeah. I've kind of, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've lost my zest for managing music acts. Uh,
Mhm.
I think part of the challenge for me is, if you're a manager today, and the people who are on this call who are managers, you got to be willing to commit a lot of time and sometimes your own money to break an act. And there are too many people who call themselves artists, And you have a TikTok video that goes viral, and all of a sudden you're quote an artist, and we find out those artists can't sell tickets. There's
And
no
some,
substance or emotional attachment to the artist.
right. And some of these artists don't have a history of performing. So then they go on stage and they find themselves like a little deer in headlights. We've all seen it. There's a difference between playing your instrument in a recording studio or
Or in
even
your bedroom.
in your bedroom than going on stage and knowing how to get an audience on its toes and all of that.
I remember the conversation because you had so much more experience than I did when Alanis broke, and we had a conversation. The record had already sold 750,000 copies, and she was getting all these kind of offers to play arenas and support big acts. And I go, Mitch, I'm going to put her out in clubs. We're going to go play 300 to 500 seat clubs because she's never done it on a big stage before. And I think that really helped cement her, I think, because I remember we played in San Diego, 500 tickets, and there were 1,000 people outside the club trying to get in. And I think
Yeah.
so in today's world, because there's so much money, managers get greedy and don't develop an artist. I go see shows and I go, this band is awful. They're not rehearsed. They don't have any stage. I mean, being on the stage takes experience to put
It does.
together a show.
In fact, I see Larry Butler in the text, my old friend.
Oh, hey, Larry.
And he said people need a performance coach. I think that's a great idea. I also think that some artists would benefit if they took an improv class when they do interviews, that they could be more fluent and spontaneous and become a great interview. I used to handle Ted Nugent, and most people really by the mid 80s we're not really fond of Ted anymore as a musician, but everybody still wanted to speak with him because he gave you the greatest interview. It was like him, David Lee Roth. They just don't even really listen to your questions. They will just riff and give you a great show. So yes,
I
everything
think
from
it's even worse than I think most of them should practice their instruments and take vocal lessons because I mean, if you look at, I was really fortunate. I was on the road on a tour with Van Halen, and we did stadiums. And every time you saw Eddie, he had a guitar in his hand. If he was at catering, he was playing guitar. If he's sitting on the bus, I mean, it was his life. And I don't see that. I see it once in a while. Like if you've seen this kid, Billy Strings, who's unbelievable musician. Yeah. But you don't see that sort of dedication, I don't think, as much anymore.
I think one of the problems of the recording industry is that it's so easy to sound good because of the technology. Yeah. So as you sound really good, it possibly prevents you from trying to achieve greatness.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think that's a bit of a problem. I mean, I listen to a lot of great rock bands, but it's like I always say, where's the Mike Campbell guitar signature sound that's going to lift this above the pack, or the Edge, or like those sounds that are just captivating.
Yeah, from Billy Idol, like those guys that really knew that side of it. And I don't want us to sound like two old guys because there are a lot of really great musicians out there, but I feel like it's harder to get above the noise because everybody's in the game.
It's true. And so we find ourselves being hired more. The thing that's changed about my business is that we used to get hired more year round on projects. Now it's more monthly. And it's a little bit frustrating because after a client turns you off or shuts the faucet off after 3 months, then you still wind up getting requests and you get ensnared and have to work, but you have to keep finding new clients. And that's really a challenge. The reason the business changed is that social media got in the way. There are superstars who could say, let's hire publicists for 6 months. they could come up with the campaign, they can implement it, and they could be with us for the tour or whatever. Maybe that gets you another 3 months, that's 9 months. And then they could disappear from you for 2 years until their next project.
Yeah.
And because social media, this, which a lot of it is run out of management offices, not
Yeah.
even the social media companies. All a manager has to say, I mean, let's say it was Rihanna's manager. She's in, if they just type into their, into their social, Rihanna's in the studio with Rick Rubin, which of course is not the case, but
Yeah.
that would be worldwide news. And you do not need a publicist
It's
to
true.
do that. But that's when you're a superstar. But we're needed to craft the story and get people excited. It takes follow up. And I always tell new artists that it could take 3 to 4 pitches to even get considered because you're waiting in line with
Yeah.
200 other people.
Yeah. I've been fortunate. I started about after I left Los Angeles. I'd worked with the two guys that had started StubHub, and I really enjoyed working with entrepreneurs. And so most of my business now is that. And the young kids I'm working with are sharp. They are willing to work 24 hours a day. They don't, they're all in. They don't have, there's not a plan B. And it's really been fun to watch young people have growth into leadership roles. There's a lot of really smart young kids out there today that really blow my mind.
It's pretty amazing, and how they've embraced technology is really key because that's what's definitely moving the industry forward, sometimes in ways that people don't like, but in a lot of ways very positively.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge movement towards direct to consumer. It's across all aspects of our life, but even more with artists, because that way they can control the brand. Because for all those years, when we had SoundScan, you knew, okay, I sold 100 records in Long Beach, but I don't know who those people are. Now, if you're selling them out of your Shopify store, you know who they are and you can have a relationship with them. And I think that's really the future of the business, is what I see.
Yeah, it's like having a house party. You invite your best friends, and some other people will want to come, but your friends will show up for you. So, yeah, you have to cater. If your audience, let's say, is 75,000 people, you can have a good career if you cater to those 75,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah. It is amazing. And the fans want that. I always tell artists, the fans can get your music anywhere. What they want is a relationship with you, more so than just the music.
Yeah, that's really key. I mean, and obviously a lot of this plays out on social media. And we try to we don't have a social media department in the company, but we suggest content to our clients. Like one of the things I did for Ozzy a few years ago, he put his book out, Dr. Ozzy, which was basically a compilation of his Rolling Stone column where he gave like crazy advice to people
Yeah.
about their health. So when I got the book, I remember calling up Sharon Osbourne and say, "Hey, why don't we let us go through the book? We'll find 10 crazy Aussie health tips. We'll put out one a day. You could put it on your Twitter." And I remember after the 10 days or so were over, his Twitter through that process.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was already substantial, but it increased even more, proving that people are waiting for unique ideas and not just to say, "Oh, here I am." And we're, or everybody now is, getting that footage of them preparing to go on stage or coming off stage. But that's getting tired also because every band is doing that. Just like the photo at the end of the night where the band takes the picture facing the camera with the audience behind them.
I think the challenge is trying to manage not letting the audience know everything about you, because I think once they've figured you out, they're ready to move on to the next challenge. I think that's a really
Yes.
hard line to walk.
Yes. I think that's a great point because there is a sense that being like an artist being mysterious. and
Yeah.
that it creates your fascination. I mean, I remember when I read that Casey Musgraves was microdosing acid, like the guy Father John Misty, and I found it, whether people can do whatever they like, and there are people who are advocates for that in terms of emotional health. And I thought that's really fascinating, and it creates a level of mystery around them that keeps me engaged.
Yeah.
Uh, and certainly, like, one of the clients I had for many years was David Bowie. I worked with him for 22 years, and everything that David did was very well thought out. When he had his 50th birthday concert at Madison Square Garden, people thought, oh, his guests were going to be Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople, because he gave them all the young dudes and helped them with
Right.
that song. Tina Turner, just because those were his friends. But he went the other way completely and invited Billy Corgan, Dave Grohl. The only quote old timer was Lou Reed, who was
Right.
his ultimate inspiration, as he's always said. So this whole thing about what everybody expected, he went another way. And he also felt he wanted to endear himself to the younger audience because he knew that would uh, increase his stature among a younger audience. So
Mitch,
it's those kind of clever moves.
when the hell are you going to write a fucking book? Jeez, come
Yeah.
on, buddy. You're going to
You know,
retire and then you can write it. The
you know,
stories,
people have said that to me. And, I remember like sitting in on some David Bowie interviews, and they would ask him about him writing a book. And I always remember him saying, I'm not interested in the rear view. I want to know what's up next and what's
Yeah.
around the bend. I feel the same way, that if I was to take all those stories, and I've got some great ones, that it it would prevent me from being engaged in the moment and my excitement about what tomorrow might bring. And it might bring a great musician. It might bring a great restaurant, or
Yeah.
a
I mean,
fun burlesque show.
I think the thing for me, I would have to betray too many people's trust. And that's why they did a big, they did that HBO series on Atlantis and they asked me to be on it. I said, I'm not doing it because I didn't trust. I didn't want
Yeah.
anything to come out that wasn't really what I said. And there was no point in it. I didn't feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah. It's true, because I'm sure you've got that book in you. I just wanted to share a David Bowie story with everybody so they can understand
Yeah.
how smart and passionate he was. It was 1995. He puts out the Outside album. That was his reunion with Brian Eno as a producer. So Nine Inch Nails was on the tour, and Bowie was in the headlining, and Nine Inch Nails were opening. And he was very conscious that that could go a lot of different ways, because Nine Inch Nails were truly of the moment. So I remember being at the rehearsal the night before in Hartford, Connecticut, in the shed there. And I remember sitting in the back during his rehearsal in the afternoon taking notes, because I knew I would have to write a press release about the opening show. And I knew that on the night of, I couldn't take notes. I'd be running around with the TV crew or all of that. So after his rehearsal is over, I just keep hanging out in the back. And then his personal assistant, Coco Schwab, who a lot of people know, she came over to me and she goes, David saw you writing notes, and he would like you to come back and he wants your impression of the show. He knew that I used to be a rock critic for Rolling Stone, Circus Crawdaddy. So it was really nice because he really respected writers like that.
Yeah.
So I came back and he goes, I need you to be honest with me. And I said, I thought a spot in the show that was really weak for me was when you did the Scott Walker song, Night Flights. And Scott Walker used to be in the Walker Brothers, and then had moved in the Sun Don't Shine, anymore. That hit, moved to England, became known for his crooning voice that Bowie was inspired by. So he put out, and David Bowie covered it, that song Night Flights, on his Black Tie, White Noise. And I just said, it wrecks the momentum. And he said to me, he goes, I understand that. But as an artist, I feel that I need to give the audience sometimes what they don't know that they need.
Right. That's a good line.
And it was really amazing for him to say that to me, because I really got, I mean, here I am in a little dressing room, and he's telling me that better to make an artistic choice and have people go to a concession stand or the bathroom as you give them a song or two that's going to challenge them. That's
Right.
how committed he was.
Yeah, you don't find that very often.
Yeah, he was truly amazing like that. And another great artist that I worked with that was 17 years, it was Tom Petty.
Yeah.
And he
I still haven't accepted that he is not here.
yeah, he was really a great conscience of rock and roll. I remember it was like 1997 or 98. He put out the Echo album. We're doing an interview with CNN, and they're asking him about the state of rock and roll, and he said, "I think rock and roll lost a lot of its luster when there was a whole array of soundtrack albums that artists were unloading their B and C sides for these
Yeah.
crappy soundtrack albums." And he goes, you don't feel, it may not be recognized at the time, but maneuvers like that keeps downgrading rock and roll to the audience. They're buying soundtrack albums and with inferior songs. And he
Yeah.
goes, the audience knows, at the end of the day, the audience knows it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the next step for musicians is I think you're going to see a retreat from some of the social media stuff. And I think the biggest problem is that, every artist I've ever had over the last 5 years, a big hunk of their time is spent on social media when it should be spent writing, recording, bettering their craft. And I'm feeling a lot of pushback when I talk to artists who are just sick of having to post every day, or they want to just do their craft. And I don't know if that's going to change or not.
I know, it's like now an artist comes off stage and gets on the bus, and rather than possibly working out a melody in their head, they're worrying about what are we going to post on socials. And
Yeah.
even if they have a social media team who suggests stuff, they have to look at their text going, change that word, do this and do that. Yeah, I just think it's part and parcel of the new world. I don't think artists can really back off of that. I mean, I think, as they say, that cliche, the train left the station,
Yeah.
and the
It's true.
audience does want the audience does want to be engaged. But I think artists, like anything else, they have to limit it. I mean, it's like the I Ching book. You have to live your life with moderation.
Yeah.
And,
Agreed.
and if that means an artist telling the manager, I feel that if I tour more than 3 months a year, it will contribute to my declining mental health. How many artists now talk about their declining mental health? Like Shawn Mendes, a pop star, he backed off from the road.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of artists who can't be pushed.
Yeah. I feel like,
Who won't sing.
yeah, I feel like, I feel like the industry, it used to be labels don't have much money anymore because the only revenue they seem is streaming. So there isn't tour support. Most of the management companies now have to have everything in house. It used to be,
Yeah.
as a manager, you manage the artist and you manage the label. And that's just not so much true anymore, which is things change, life changes, but it does make it more complicated.
It does. And, and if, in fact, that change has hurt us. Like we did publicity for Extreme this year for their album. We
Yeah.
had a very successful rollout. And then when it came time for the tour, Primary Wave, which is their management company, and Robbie Hoffman is a very nice manager, so I'm not dissing anybody here, but we were told that Primary Wave has in-house publicity and they will do it.
Yeah.
And so we find ourselves like losing business, not only because of the social media aspect, but
Yeah.
then because management companies have been forced to beef up because the record companies don't provide them with the levels of departments that used to exist and take care of all of
Yeah.
that. It's true.
I think the biggest thing I've learned over the years, I take meetings with everybody because I've never had a real job. It's always been somebody's recommended me or I met someone, we had an idea to do something together. So I tell all the young people I work with, if someone wants to take a meeting with you, spend 35, 40 minutes with them. You might be surprised what you learn, and you may not be working with them today, but tomorrow, you know, Mitch, you and I know how small this business is. I mean,
Yes,
the
I
same
fully,
people you and I have been working with, most of them we still work with today. And I try to bring as many young people along as I can because people helped me out. I mean, I was really fortunate. All of us have mentors. Mine was a guy named Bob Cavallo. Bob had managed Prince through the Purple Rain years and Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I can remember several times I would come into the office and just be mad as hell. And he goes, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "The artist, all this kind of stuff." And he goes, "Look, you can lead him to water, but you can't stop him from jumping in and drowning." And that kind of went, okay, it's not my job. I can't control them. I can just try to guide them. And if they choose to jump off the bridge, it's not my fault.
Now, it's interesting you bring up mentors. My first mentor was Lee Salters, who handled Streisand, Sinatra. He
Wow.
was, truly one of the greats. We used to have meetings in his office at the end of every day. And I remember one time he said something, and it just, to this day, it resonates with me. He said, if somebody jumps off a building, try to figure out how you can get your client involved with the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for instance, and a good example of that thing, Soldiers and Roskin Friedman handled Alice Cooper. So when the Hollywood sign back in the day was in a state of disrepair, Alice Cooper stepped up and donated money to help the sign retain, its original luster. So that's an example of, like, look at the news. Is there a way to get your artist involved in a story or a subject?
Yeah.
On a good day, I feel like I can tap into that, but I got to be honest. I am crushed by the level of emails that come in that
Yeah.
need to be responded to, and I feel that is hurt. But to your point, I try to get out and meet people for lunches and dinners and go old school. One of the things I do here in Las Vegas, every 3 or 4 months, I have a mixer. I find a groovy restaurant. I do a no host bar. I pay for the food, and I could put 60 people in a room
Yeah.
meeting each other, talking. Friendships have been formed, business relationships have been formed. It's so easy to get sucked into this computer screen that you have to work against
Yeah.
it and get into the field. I mean, I think a great example of being in the field, literally, we were PR for Coachella for the first 12 years before Golden Voice took it in-house. And I remember we went to the first one, which was at 99. Yeah, it was right after the Bad Woodstock. And I
I
remember
was at
being,
that. I was at that bad Woodstock
oh
because
God,
Atlantis played it.
right. And we had Alanis playing Corn.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, fortunately I didn't have to go to that one. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
And so
That's the
I
first time
remember,
I ever had mud thrown at me.
oh God,
Yeah.
that's
Did you
funny.
see
I remember walking,
go ahead.
I remember walking through the Coachella field, and that year it was very heavy electronic. I mean, aside from Tool and Rage and other headliners, it was populated with let's see, just so many electronic acts. There was Chemical Brothers, and beyond. And I remember walking through the field, and I said to my associate, Marcy, because we were the PR for Coachella, I said, we need an electronic music department. Came back to the office, and a week later, we were all having lunch together. Hey, guess what? We were in offices. We were not working remotely.
Right.
Now that opens a whole other conversation, but I'll just say,
Yeah.
so we're sitting there and Christine Ashton, who used to work for
I remember
us,
Christine. Yes.
said, I know an electronic publicist. And I said, well, let's meet her. And it was Alexandra Greenberg, who worked at our company for almost 20 years, and I remain friends with her. And Christine is saying she's here
Hey,
on the
Christine, how you
text.
been?
How fantastic. Yeah, so that opened up. So here it is. We're a company known for rock, for country, for this and that. And all of a sudden, we're signing artists like Dead Mouse. And this is even when he's putting records out on, not even records, but recordings on Beatport.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we were handling, David Guetta and Steve Aoki, and we really emerged in that. The whole thing is being in the field, sitting with people. This is to your point, sit with people. It's like if you rub two sticks together, there's going to be fire.
Yeah.
Whether it's a good fire or a bad fire, I can't tell you, but there will be an exchange.
It took me a while to figure out how to manage the email flow, and kind of what I do. I don't book. I go to the gym and then I come home, and from 9 to 11, I just deal with email. And then I take all my meetings in the afternoons. So I try not to let it get bogged down. I'm always going to take a meeting over do an email if I can, because I've met so many interesting people, and all the companies I work with now all came from somebody said you should meet this person. I met them. When I take on a new company, you and I are doing this company called Gigs that we're launching, which is like Indeed for the touring business. And I spent 6 months with the CEO before I ever agreed to work with her, because I wanted to know her and
Yeah.
understand if she could take a punch. Was she serious about this? What was her motivations? Because when you're in the foxhole and shit is happening, you need to know your partners.
That's true. And like for us, like when we haven't we haven't officially launched Gigs yet for the PR campaign, because we're waiting for it, to move from beta to the public. And I was really captivated when you brought it to me that here is going to be something that's going to connect industry professionals in companies to industry professionals of touring personnel. And it's kind of amazing because I just thought about it. If there was a gig happening in Milwaukee and you needed a sound man, but your regular sound man had to fly back to his home to take care of an extenuating circumstance,
Yeah.
through this app, you could learn who a possible sound man is to help you in
Yes.
Milwaukee and possibly the next 3 cities.
Yeah.
So I think that really captivated me, and it shows, like, I have a fascination with technology. Yeah, I'm buried by it. I'm intimidated by it. I mean, I remember 1996, MSO, which is what the company was called. We were the first music independent company to have its own website, because I
Right.
saw what was happening. And somebody like, I remember it's like, it embrace the fear and create something from it. I saw record companies doing it, and I looked at our roster saying some of if you look at our roster, it's bigger than some of what the labels have. So
Yeah.
we should get a website.
Yeah.
And that really helped us. And so this whole thing of like, try not to be intimidated, try to deal with it. I mean, there are some things, I mean, look, Tumblr, whatever happened to Tumblr? Who knows where TikTok is going to wind up?
What happened
Whether,
to Vine? Like what
oh, that's
happened?
right.
Yeah.
Right. And think of all the time and energy that people have invested of their brain into Tumblr and Vine and these things that don't exist. And that is where you can be crushed by technology. Like I never got a TikTok account because I was just afraid that if I fall into that rabbit hole, then I can't be creative. I mean, I have to I walk around the house or I take walks or when I go to the gym, it's like, oh shit, I need a creative idea.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember there were managers, and Christine, who's listening, will know this. It's like we were doing publicity for Korn, and the album See You on the Other Side came out. And Jeff Quantinen's called up, and Jeff, a great manager, but very, very intense. And
Yeah.
he goes, look, man, I need an idea from you. And let's reconvene in 24 hours. And this is key for you to continue on this campaign.
Yeah.
So we came up with the idea of having a press conference at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, playing off "See You on the Other Side." And of course, the guys arrived in a hearse. We had MTV shoot that. And interestingly, because there was money to roll, Quanon and his team hired Brent Bolthouse, who controlled all the hot parties. So there was a party at the mausoleum that night, and Axl Rose came as someone's guest. It was like his first public sighting, like
Yeah.
in 8 years. And I remember walking up to him and I said, Mr. Rose. And if you don't know a rock star or a musician, it's nice to address them like that because you're not their friend. They'll know
Yeah.
that you're a professional. And I
Yeah.
said, Mr. Rose, Mr. Davis and the rest of Korn would be honored if you would come to their area. If you're open to a photograph, that's fine. And if not, that's fine too, whatever you like.
Yeah.
And he was really agreeable, and it helped that party get extra publicity. But
Yeah.
again, it's the creativity of like, what's your idea? Is there a party? Is there an event? And look, record companies don't even have budgets these days to do, like
No.
big parties.
No, it's lost a little bit of the entertainment side. I'm a big believer in team. I think that's why you and I got together. So my ego was not threatened if I called you to get your advice on something, because I've learned so much from other people. I was in a meeting with our gigs team about the launch, and we hired this girl. She just came out of University of Georgia, and she had some incredible ideas. And most people wouldn't even have her in the room, but I go, yeah, put her in the room. Let's let people free flow the conversation.
See, that's great that you don't let your ego get in the way. There is nothing like young gun bravado. There
Yeah,
just isn't. And I'll be honest, there's some aspects of me. I had more bravado in certain things when I was young. When I was handling Ted Nugent, I remember I was reading in USA Today and it said that Muzak was going up for sale. Westinghouse was putting it up because they owned it. And I remember I called Doug Banker and Ted up and I said, oh, let's make a crazy offer to buy it. They'll decline it. And
yeah,
then we'll say that, that Muzak declined Jews. I remember I called up and the assistant or secretary, as assistants were known then. And I
yeah,
said to her, Ted, because I knew what they were, because it said in the USA Today story, they were looking for like 35 million or something like that. And I said, Ted Nugent wants to make an offer for 20 million. And she said, well, that's far less than what you're reading in the news. And I said, okay, I'll let Ted know he's being declined.
yeah,
Like now I would be afraid of lawyers and all that.
yeah,
So we put a press release out. Muzak declines Ted Nugent. He wanted to buy it so he could destroy it because he
yeah,
felt that Muzak has ruined the best minds of a generation. We had Brian Gumbel talking about it on the Today Show without Ted even being interviewed. And
yeah,
that's when you know that you have entered the cultural conversation. I
yeah,
don't think today that I would probably do that. I would go, shit, the lawyers are going to come after me.
yeah.
But
It,
so to your point, young gun bravado is key, and they're going to see it from a different way.
yeah, yeah. My young gun bravado has lots of scars.
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting you say that. Yeah, you got lots of scars, but you got to wear them proudly too.
Yeah, no, I don't regret. I mean, obviously, we all have some regrets, but I mean, this business has afforded me a life. I've traveled all over the world. I've met the presidents, I've met the Pope. I mean,
Mm,
a bunch of crazy shit that I could have never dreamed about when I was growing up, you know, in that sense. And I
yeah.
get up every day. I'm get up every day. The glass is half full. I'm really excited to see what the day is going to bring. Some days I'm getting up, I'm listening to Bad Bunny, and some days I'm getting up and listening to AC/DC. It just depends on the day. So, Tom, if you're asking about the Pope, Alanis did an event for the Pope. He does this thing every year that for the kids in Italy, and so she went and played it, and so we had an audience with the Pope. It was a little strange, I have to admit, but
Yes. Did she sing her famous lyric about what happened in the movie theater?
no, but we did play. We went to China to do MTV,
Oh,
and before she went on, the knock on the dressing room door, she was on the stage rehearsing. These two Chinese people, government officials, came, two in uniform, and they said, if she swears on stage, you will not be leaving the country. I went, okay. And Alanis was kind of like, that was one where she goes, fuck them, I don't care. I go, let me tell you, there's sometimes when you put your ego in your back pocket and get the hell out of town.
yes. You got to leave the building. That's now. See that's a great story right there. I love that.
Yeah. So anyway, there we go.
Yeah.
Um,
So, just one thing that occurred to me, one of the things about the business that was great for assistants, we're talking about young gun bravado. Back in the day, we would have like David Bowie call the office, and the assistants would be like, "Oh, hi, David. Let me see if Mitch is there. Um, just give me 30 seconds." He was wrapping something up, and then David would engage the person on the phone. And David Bowie used to come to our office and do interviews. Now people can hide, they could do Zooms or they could do anything. And it was amazing. I do miss those days. I wish it was a little more interactive, but the world
yeah,
has changed.
I'll tell you a quick Steve Perry story, then we'll get off this. It was before you had car phone. It was when you had a car phone, but you didn't have a cell phone like this. And so Steve would call the office, and my assistant would go, "Oh, he's heading home." He would call my house and talk to my wife for 10 minutes while I was there. And she
Mm.
skipped her high school prom to go see Journeys. She goes, so I'm holding my 1-year-old in one arm on my hip, and I'm talking to Steve Perry on the other line. I mean, a good assistant knew how, because you did have 3 calls going. A good assistant knew how to talk to the client and keep them engaged, make them feel special while you were handling business with somebody else.
You know, we're going to be wrapping up soon. I'm going to take it back to Trudy Green because as
Yeah.
you're talking, it's a great story. So I was handling Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson, that's a pressure cooker
Yeah.
because everything is played at high stakes and nothing could be done wrong. And this is again, we didn't have, I mean, I guess there were pagers at the time, but we didn't have one, and maybe she didn't have one either, so that was not a possibility. She forced us to have a separate phone line at our company that only she could use to find us.
Oh,
So she
yeah.
would never have to go to the switchboard. And I know it sounds really crazy and cavalier, but it's also that she was under pressure. And it's
Yeah.
hard to tell the Janet Jackson team or even possibly Janet herself, I can't find your publicist at this second to give you that answer.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so but it's very clever. She forced us to do it, and it's kind of crazy. Of course, like
Yeah.
we cursed her, like to ourselves that she made us do it, but she figured out how to get to the front of the bus.
Yeah.
And that's where you got to give her credit.
The great piece of advice I always got is the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
All right, Tom.
Guys, you can see the smile on my face. The wisdom and the stories that came from this have just been magnificent. I wish I could let this go on for hours because you all would fill the time and no one would care. It's just awesome. To the young people that listen today, you got some wisdom from 2 of the smartest guys, not just in this room, but any room. Gentlemen, it's been a privilege and an honor to feature you today. I hope that you all continue to thrive in all your endeavors. Keep working. Mitch, don't ever stop. I mean, you're just getting started.
Well, Thank you. And again, that just to reinforce, that's why I don't really have time to write a book. It's like, what's up? What's around the bend? Is there maybe some crazy musical trend I need to know about so I can hop on that train? You never know.
Yeah.
Well, I do hope you write it, and it'll be great.
Hey, it's
Thank
my email. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Anyone is welcome to reach out to me, and if they just want to talk.
And folks, he means that.
Yeah.
Scott and I were introduced by a friend about, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years ago, and a fast friendship formed, and we've attempted to do some business together. He's been a source of not only inspiration for me, but also a lot of great candidates for searches that I work on. So he walks his talk.
Yeah.
Mitch,
Thanks, Tom, for getting us the second time around. Technical
Yeah.
difficulties the first time, so thanks.
all good. Mitch, I'll see you in Vegas in 3 weeks.
You guys
Yeah,
should
and-
get together.
We
Yeah,
will.
we should. And I'll take you to some fine places. One of the great things about Vegas, I always tell people, Chinatown, 3 square miles, 200 plus restaurants, not only Asian, but other cuisines as well, hipster bars. Many people don't have a chance to leave the strip because their visits are short, but it's one of the great aspects of this town. It really is. So maybe we'll hit something there if you're free. So that's it. Stay beautiful. This is wonderful just to be able to chat, impart some knowledge, tell some fun stories and good memories. And here we are years later, and it feels great.
Still
Thank
swinging,
you.
Mitch. We are still swinging.
Something. All right, man. You
Keep
too.
it up, boys.
See you in the streets. Bye-bye.
Yep. See ya. Bye.
Bye.